I'm Insomniac, and this is the Spinnaker Hull.
Who are you?
Insomniac.
First of all, big shout out to Steve for dropping this off. As you saw in the beginning of the video, there was an unboxing. He often buys watches, drops them off here before he even gets to see them, and lets me unbox them and spend time with them before he gets to see them, which is very much appreciated. Hit the like button to show Steve some love. If you have any watches you want to see reviewed here at Should I Time This, email me at shoulditimethis@gmail.com. I will let you know where to send the watches. They'll be reviewed, insured, and sent back. Before we dive into the watch, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell and the like thing button. I have a ton more reviews on the way soon that I don't want you to miss. Alright, let's get into it. The case on the Spinnaker Hull is sizable, tall, bulky, but I actually mean that in a good way. Without being obnoxious or too large, it has a certain presence to it that looks and feels like a substantial dive watch. The shape of the case itself is blunt and blocky at a glance, but when you look at it closer from all the angles, it actually has some handsome subtle curves. You also have a substantial crown guard extending from the case on the crown side. Finishing is simple and fairly well done. Your case sides are polished while the tops and bottom of the main case and lugs are all brushed. Case back is a solid screw down type with the brand deeply engraved into it, along with various information about the watch engraved around the outer edge. The screw down crown is very nice. It's the correct size for this case, and it has a very good grip for winding and setting the watch. Last but not least, we have the bezel, which is a coin edge style with a ceramic insert finished in a very subtle matte brown. Not only does the bezel feel and look good, but it feels very high quality. The unidirectional action has a good stiffness to it, sounds good, the bezel edge has great grip to it, and most importantly, it stays in place anywhere you set it with no slop or wiggle in the mechanism. So overall, it's not an especially unique case aesthetically, but in terms of build quality and function, it's very nice. The dial on this watch is most of the inspiration for the title of the video, because either Spinnaker used a poor example of this watch on their site, or whoever took the photos needs to be fired. The dial on this watch is much nicer than what I expected based on the pictures online. This watch has one of those dials that's not only pleasing to look at, but it gets better the longer you look at it. The picture I saw on their website looked like a grayish flat backdrop with an almost black spray paint splatter-like effect. In reality, the base of the dial has this really subtle but nice radial brushed base, and the progressive fade from the outer edge of the dial towards the inside is a dark brownish gray blending into a silver gray that, because of the brown hue, sometimes has champagne-like color characteristics to it. It's very well done. The outermost section of the dial has a white printed minute track, which is small but legible. Under that you have a fairly thick set of applied steel hour markers with large loom fillings, all neatly done and properly sized given the diameter of the dial. You have the Spinnaker name applied under the 12 marker and automatic, along with the water resistance rating printed over the 6 o'clock marker. A neat date window at 3 o'clock, white numeral on a black disc, which is the right choice for blending in with this dial. And I like the small attention to detail here, where Spinnaker didn't just throw away the hour marker here. Instead, they placed a much smaller marker to the right of the date window. Very nice. Last but not least, we have the hands, which are very simple but very nice. First of all, the handset is a great length for this dial, with the minute hand and second hand stretching almost all the way out to the minute track at the outer edge of the dial. The hands themselves have a rough, brushed look to the edges. Not rough like cheap, more like raw industrial steel kind of look. And the minute hand has a cool skeletonized extension past the stem, which adds a nice little something extra here. All three hands have loom filling, and the style of the handset works well with the dial. Overall, not unlike the case, most of it isn't especially unique other than the progressive finishing maybe, but it's nicely done and has a great quality look to it. The only usable complication on this watch is the date at 3 o'clock. It's large enough that it's easy to read, and you have great contrast for legibility with the white numeral on a black disc, so it's a simple and very useful complication that works well. The loom on this watch isn't flawless, but it's very good. All of the white markers and numerals on the bezel are done in Loom, all 3 hands have Loom, and all of the hour markers on the dial have Loom. All of it glows bright and even, it picks up a charge from standard indoor light fairly well, and it lasts pretty long. The only small thing I knocked a point off for here is the strange separation with the hands. The hour and minute hands have the largest amounts of Loom filling of anything on the watch, yet they glow a little bit dimmer than everything else. It's definitely good enough to be functionally useful, but it creates a little bit of a visual disconnect. Overall though, good Loom. Time at a glance on this watch is excellent. The contrast between the large Loom fillings and steel borders on all of the hands and markers against the dark backdrop paired with the long pointy tipped handset makes finding the time on this uncluttered dial very simple at a quick glance. The bracelet on this watch is the only thing I really didn't like, although as you hear me say in many reviews, this is the most easily fixable issue with any watch, being that the straps and bracelets are easy to switch out and generally affordable to purchase. The bracelet on this watch looks great with this piece aesthetically, with a nicely matched brushed finish and a well-made double locking clasp mechanism with the Spinnaker name engraved into it, which I'll show you in a little bit. The issue here is twofold. First of all, I appreciate the beefy thickness of the bracelet in terms of creating balance with the large and fairly weighty watch body, but it's noticeably heavy on the wrist, which wouldn't be that bad if not for the fact that despite having a standard size 7-inch wrist, regardless of how many links I subtracted or where I put the fine adjustment setting at the clasp, because of the weight of the watch body, the sizing needs to be just snug enough that the watch doesn't rotate on the wrist all day from weight, but loose enough that it isn't cutting off your circulation, and believe it or not, I was never able to find that sweet spot. What I ended up with is a size that kept the watch in place with a bit of free movement so it's not cutting off blood flow, but it moves just enough that this bracelet constantly pulls the hairs on my not so hairy wrist, which is terribly uncomfortable. So the bracelet has a sturdy, durable feel to it, it looks great with this watch, but it wasn't comfortable to wear at all. If I owned this piece, I'd switch the bracelet out for a better bracelet or a strap immediately. As of the time of this review, this model sells for $445 on the Spinnaker site, and believe it or not, as of the time of this review anyway, I could not find it in this color on any other site, so I really don't have any other prices to compare to Spinnaker's price, although you can get the Hull in other colors on other sites that I've seen brand new for as little as $350. At $445, value here is kind of right smack in the middle. It is a handsome watch with a great quality look, solid feel, and a workhorse mechanical movement. And for the few of you who actually dive with your dive watches, this watch actually does have the specs and features that it could handle a decent dive. But at almost $450, there is a lot of competition in the mechanical dive watch segment. And being that basically the only thing I was able to point out about this particular watch that made this watch unique was the dial finishing situation, you'd have to want this dial badly enough over hundreds of other watches out there in a similar price point to find this to be a fantastic value. So do I think this watch is worth the asking price? Yes. At that price, do I think this watch is a fantastic value? No. Well, again, a big shout out to Steve. Thank you very much for sending this in. It was nice to spend some time with this particular model here from Spinnaker. I've done the Croft a while ago, so you can go check that out on the channel. Make sure you subscribe. I have a lot of new watch reviews coming soon, so stay tuned.